My name is Samuel Saint-Amour. I'm working as the marketing manager at Scolab, and I wanted to welcome you to this fifth Global Math Project webinar, and this one is titled Teaching Joyful Mathematics. Just before we start, and just before I leave the stage for James and Sunil, I wanted to share a few housekeeping items with you guys. First of all, if you have questions, please type them in the chat box there. I see you've already started. That's amazing. And Matthew and James and Snell, you've given the example. That's even more perfect. If you have any technical difficulty during the webinar, try to type them in there. I'll stay in the background and try to help you guys. And if we have any technical difficulty, if one of the hosts just quits or something, or is kicked out like Snell right now, we'll try to just bring them back in, and we'll just continue the webinar. So that being said, I will leave this stage to you, James, and maybe Sunil. Hopefully he'll be back, and see you towards the end of the webinar. So have a great one.
I am so happy to start. In fact, I'm so excited to have our special guest, Matthew, with us. Math with Matthew. But I don't even know his last name. All I know him is MWM, which is the most brilliant title of all, who has just written a spectacular book that was released 17 days ago. It's all about teaching with joy. That'll be teaching mathematics, which happens to be a subject close to my heart, teaching mathematics with joy. And that's the theme of tonight's session. And Sunil is back, which is grand. And I would like to welcome Matthew to the scene. And I'd like, Matthew, would you just give us like a quick overview of your general philosophy and what your fabulous new book is all about?
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, James. Pleasure to be here with you and Sunil, two leaders within math education. It's great to talk with you tonight about joyful mathematics. So so I'm Matthew Bayranovan, but better known as Math with Matthew, as that's the website that I run and kind of the things that I do under that name. And my idea, my philosophy of teaching mathematics is trying to build conceptual understanding while also finding ways to increase students' interest and engagement in learning math. And that is a great partnership with the Global Math Project. And as you mentioned, and that's very nice of you to mention, that I did have a book that just came out a few days ago. It's called Teach Math Like This, Not Like That. And the idea behind that is to explore 4 critical areas on how we can improve student learning in the mathematics classroom. And I thought it would be fun tonight to talk together with you, James, and with Sunil, and with the members of our webinar here to go through the 4 ideas that I believe are critical issues for teaching mathematics: planning, pedagogy, assessment, and relationships, and talk about how we can look at that lens in a joyful manner so we can focus on helping students learn, but in a joyful way.
So planning with joy, pedagogy with joy, assessment with joy, and relationships with joy. Is that a relationship in like personal relationships with your students? Is conversation you have with your kids? Is that your relationship with mathematics, or all sense of the word relationship? I'm just curious.
It is all sense of the word relationships, and actually that's one of the things that I thought we could talk about, and I could hear you share about how you think of joy in regards to all of those things, those 4 areas. So I'll be very curious to hear what your ideas are, in addition to the ideas that I plan on sharing.
So let's start. The mission of the Global Math Project is basically no mission to the Global Math Project. So the mission is basically just to bring uplifting joy. Just like, let's change the world's perception of what mathematics can be, how it can be thought about, how it can be played with, how it can be taught, how it can be learnt, how it can just be enjoyed by one and all. So let's work on this on all levels, on the outreach level, the enrichment level, and also the classroom experience level. And that's the part I'm really, really interested in. Because, that's basically the only experience many people have of mathematics, what they go through from K through 8 to 10 to 12, when they stop mathematics. So let's make that part joyful as well. All right, so I agree. Let's go through them. Let's go through planning, pedagogy, assessment, and relationships. Let's do it. So how do you want to begin, Matthew? I'm ready to chime in anytime.
All right, let's start by talking about planning. So when we talk about planning, this is the work that's done outside of the classroom to prepare for your lessons in whatever capacity possible. And so there a lot of work goes into planning. Teachers don't just show up and be able to teach the material so students learn. A lot of work goes on outside of it. And so the idea that I wanted to share to encourage people to do to help the planning of their lessons, but done in a joyful way, is by incorporating the history of mathematics into the planning and the execution of the lessons. And by the history of math, I'm talking... Go
That's
ahead.
easier said than done, because where in one's training does one get the story of mathematics? 'Cause I get that complaint a lot. I mean, how do you know about mankind's journey here? Because it's not taught in the, I don't know, not in the high school curriculum. It's not taught in most pedagogical courses that you go through for teacher preparation, or even undergraduate math major courses. What do you do in mathematics? Where's that storyline? How do you find it?
Well, I think the best example, if it's offered at the university, is to take it at the university level. So where I'm an adjunct instructor at the University of Massachusetts, that is a course that is offered as an elective. Having said that, if you don't have that opportunity, there's a great series called The Story of Math, which is a DVD series. It's done by Oxford professor Marcus de Soto, and it's a great 6 to 8 hour journey in a very interactive, engaging manner that takes you from the very beginning with the Egyptians to the Babylonians to the Greeks, all the way through modern mathematics. And it shows you, first of all, a lot of the stories are very interesting and engaging in themselves. And then you also can learn about how these mathematicians did their mathematics and how they got more precise values of pi over time. What are the methods they used? You have the ideas of interdisciplinary learning, where you tie the math with, let's say, the history, as well as with the sciences. And you also have the ability to learn in a conceptual manner. Because when they did mathematics back with the Babylonians and the Egyptians, they weren't focusing on procedural knowledge or memorization. They only did mathematics that actually made sense to them. So they were doing it in ways that actually worked and was based on conceptual learning. And so if you learn the way the ancient mathematicians did, you're learning for understanding, which I think is very important.
All right, so let me chime in something there. So, of course, that's a brilliant way to do things. And there's actually a simpler way to go through it. Just be your childlike, wondrous self. Kids always ask why. Why is the most favorite question of a 3-year-old. And go back to your childlike self and ask, okay, I'm teaching quadratics. Think about it. The name quadratic, it's weird. What's it got to do with the number 4? You know, ax squared plus bx plus c. It's the second powers. What's the number 4? Or why do we call, I don't know, why 60 degrees, 360 degrees in a circle, which happens to be 60 degrees in a minute, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. Something's going on with the number 60. And my answer is, okay, you don't have a time basically to sit down and read a whole course or read a whole book on history and math, but Google these questions. Google why 360 degrees in a circle, why the name quadratic. That way you can find these little tidbits, and you'll find that over weeks, months, years, as you do that, you're actually modeling for your kids what it means to be a curious human being, which I want to teach my kids to be curious human beings, and pick up the stories that go along. You'll find little tidbits of the story of mathematics as you do that.
And I think inquiry is such an important part of mathematics, that authentic inquiry. We have that so often in science, where they have that authentic inquiry, and we lack that sometimes in mathematics. So what you just suggested, James, I think is a great example to encourage inquiry in the classroom and say, let's all be learners here. If we don't know something, let's look it up and we can all learn it together, why some of these questions are what they are.
Google is fabulous. And you know what? And Wikipedia in mathematics is basically always right. You should question everything you read, of course, but actually, so many people read these things, the bulk of the knowledge is right on mark. It's great. It's absolutely wonderful. All right, sorry, don't mean to interrupt your flow. That's brilliant. All right, planning, brilliant, got it. Planning with the human story of mathematics in mind as best you can.
And so now let's talk about pedagogy in regards to the way we teach the mathematics. And I think the best Uh-oh, did we lose me?
Uh-oh, have we lost everyone?
Can you hear me? Am I back?
I can see and hear Matthew. Can you hear and see me?
Okay. Well, I can hear you, yes. So it looks like we are back. So what I was saying is, I think the best example for joyful and meaningful teaching comes directly from you, James, and the Global Math Project, as well as the Exploding Dots. And in fact, this evening in my history math course that I teach, we just did Exploding Dots this evening, and it went over so well, where students so often have said, I had no idea why you do these things or understood it. This actually makes perfect sense. So anytime that you can find it a way to make sense of what you are doing mathematically, so the students can say, oh, or aha, that's exactly what you want to do to make mathematics joyful. So Exploding Dots, I think, is the best example of that. And I would say another example, which I really want to encourage teachers to do. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
So the real question is, how does someone like me come up with the story of Exploding Dots? So you say, okay, you got James 10, did this thing, and it's like, I'm blown away by it. Okay, that's great. That's good for him. But how can I do it myself? What's the answer to that?
Well, how can
I
you
have an
create it
answer
yourself,
if
are
you're
you
stuck.
saying? Yeah.
Yeah, how do you create your own equivalent of exploding dots? The fact is, okay, I will tell you, it's, I have the confidence in my life to admit I don't know stuff. In fact, I know nothing, basically. I know very little mathematics, and I'm so willing and so comfortable to start at the beginning and assume I do not know the answers. I do not need to be the expert in the classroom. In fact, I want to model to my students not being an expert, but learning how to figure things out for myself and doing it on the fly. So something like exploding dots only came about because I decided I didn't really understand place value in a deep way. I didn't understand its consequences. So I started thinking about place value from the very beginning. Which you might think of someone with a PhD in mathematics from Princeton, what the heck is he doing studying place value and thinking about it again? But I'm willing to do that. I think if you just take any subject you're looking at and say, okay, I'm going to go back to my 3-year-old self. I'm going to really figure it out for myself to my kids. That's how things like exploding dots came up. Now, it's pretty scary because I know you're meant to be the expert in the classroom as a maths teacher, but I think you're thinking about pedagogy that way. How can I go cut through the clutter, see what the storyline is for myself, for my own human self, and say, I don't understand it. What's really going on? How can I really get it? Let's make it a shared experience with my kid. That's how I interpret that.
And I think that's outstanding. And I think it's very important for people to say, I don't know everything in regards to math. And I know one of the things Sunil does in presentations that he's done before is Sunil freely admits to people, I only know 1% or 5% of all of mathematics. Sunil, if you're with us, can you share the story about what you do in the open gym floor for sharing how much math you have? Actually, I don't think we have Sunil. So let me talk about what I believe is a very important way to have joyful learning of mathematics, and that is changing the philosophy. Instead of taking a problem, solving it, and then taking that same problem and solving it again the exact same way 15 times, and then for homework, do it another 10 or 15 times where we're doing the same process over and over again. That is not joyful, and students fall into one of two categories. Either category one, they understand how to do it and they did it a couple of times and they're all set, now they're bored, or they don't know how to do it at all, and now they're just saying, I'm confused and you're asking me to do another 20 times. I would rather cut it down and take one problem and say, how many different ways can we solve this exact same problem? Let's be creative, let's explore together, and as a class, as a group, can we find 3, 4, 5 different ways to solve the same problem there? Because that is joyful and it helps me understand what exactly problem solving is all about. What do you think of that, James?
Okay, so yeah, so at some point, okay, absolutely. And you may argue at some point you just have to do the push-ups, that you might want to just do the exercise to be fluent at it. I get that. But it doesn't need to be 50 push-ups for every single person to be able to do a push-up. So I used to do things like, okay, yes, we've got these 20 problems on this worksheet that I meant to hand out to my kids. So my homework for the kids was, do as many of these that you feel like, until you feel like you're comfortable and get it, that you know how to do it. And then just look at the rest of the list, pick what looks like the hardest one that's on the rest of the list, and do that one as well just to make sure. That's it. So some kids just could get it in like the first 3 problems, they feel like they really get it, they test themselves later on with one harder problem near the end of the list, golden. If it takes another kid 20 problems to do it, that's fine. That's fine. Let kids be in control of their own learning. With guidance, of course, that's their adult role, to help guide them in that. But in the end, it's got to be their experience, and it can't just be the push-ups for the sake of the push-ups. Maybe 3 are enough for some kids. Let them decide that for themselves, and then test themselves on it. Absolutely, absolutely. I really worry about exercises for the sake of exercises. I don't believe in assigning, I must assign 45 minutes of homework for the sake of, because that's what I meant to do in my high school experience. No way. I will assign, some problems take longer than 45 minutes. Some problems take shorter than 45 minutes. Just let the math be its own thing. I don't believe in busy work for the sake of busy work. That doesn't feel joyful to me at all.
And to follow up on this idea of assigning work in the class, I think it's important that we focus more on problems as opposed to exercises. And what I mean by this is exercises are tasks that are very rote, quick. I would rather have higher order thinking, problem solving activities for the students to do, because that higher order thinking, that where you don't immediately know the process to solve a problem, that is a better, more joyful experience than doing 20 of the exact same thing over and over again.
Right. So then, Well, okay, just be careful here, because what could be an exercise to one person could be a problem for another. If you don't know how to do a basic routine exercise, then you've actually got a problem. The definition of a problem is not knowing how to get going. That's great. So in some sense, even what seems like an exercise can be a problem. That's fine. Recognize that for some kids. And the other thing about problems is there's a tough line there, and this is the joy and the horror of mathematics. My colleague Paul Zeitz calls it funstration. At some point, the fun gets frustrating, and just trying to find that balance that becomes too much is a hard line. So at that point, I will give my kids the advice: when it's starting to become unfun, let it go. Just don't bother doing it. Just give it a break. Go for a walk. Leave it to tomorrow. Whatever. You don't have to do 45 minutes, because the brain doesn't actually work that way. When you're stuck and it's not fun anymore, actually stop. That's my advice.
Yep, I think that's
weird.
good advice.
I guess I was a very bizarre teacher. So.
Well,
Yep.
I mean, you are a very engaging teacher, and
Now, of course, I'm relying on some.
I was going to say you're a very engaging teacher, and you're one that can take the pulse of the class and make sure that the mathematics they're learning is something that is having a positive influence on them, that it's a joyful experience, and not we're doing it for the sake of doing it because that's what the next page in our curriculum dictates us that we have to do.
Correct. Yep.
All right, James,
Brilliant.
let's move on and talk about next on the list is assessments. And so when we talk about assessments, what we're not talking about is the state assessments, things that are out of a teacher's control. I'm talking about assessments in the classroom, the formative assessments, the tests, the quizzes, the things that teachers can control. And I know there's something that you are very passionate about that I want to spend a few minutes in talking about, and that is that can become joyful with assessments, and that's the idea of being allowed to retake assessments over time. You want to start with your thoughts on that, James?
Oh my goodness. Why not let kids retake assessments? I mean, it just drove me bonkers in the world when I was in that. So that you can't retake a test because you've seen the questions before, blah, blah, blah. I don't get it. So in fact, I was extreme. So let me tell you two extreme things I did. Number one, I'd often give quizzes with all the answers supplied, which is shocking. Here's a question. By the way, the answer is 4.2 meters. And then I gave the kids a big blank space. So what am I really telling the kids there? I do not care about the computation in the end. I'm really caring about the process to get to that. Show me how to get to the 4.2 meters. Plus, there's another psychological bit of ease to it that actually when you get 4.2 meters at the end of your computation, you're correct. That helps. Why not? The other thing is that the computation part is really just a detail. Of course, if I was working for NASA, I'd have to get that 4.2 absolutely correct. But I know I'd be checking it 14 times in a row with a team of people also checking as well. So in some sense, the computation part isn't actually the important part, it's the thinking. And the other thing is, why not let kids retake things over and over and over again until they get it? Why not let them all get 100% on every possible quiz? In fact, I gave what I call 100% packets. I gave these kids great big long packets of really tough, juicy problems. And their job was to do it over and over and over again, keep submitting to me. I'd grade it, get them more and more feedback until they got each and every question, until each and every kid in that class had 100% on that assignment. Why not? Isn't my goal to have everyone get A pluses? Isn't that what I should be having? Shouldn't my roll book at the end of the year be A pluses for everyone? Then great, we're on board, we've done it. My job is done.
You're absolutely correct. And one of the things that drives one of the things that drives me crazy is this idea about that they have to learn it for the first time, and if we allow them to retake it, then we're saying we're not encouraging them to learn it. And I agree with you 100%. That is not the right philosophy. And even some teachers allow retaking of tests, but then they said, I'm going to average the two scores. So if you got a 60 the first time and 100 the second time, that means you got an 80. And I would disagree. If you can get 100 on the test and it's 2 weeks later, well, why does that matter? You showed competency. You showed proficiency on that. That's the mark that you should earn.
Well, also, you show the fact what you do in life. When you don't get it right the first time, you try and try again until you do it right. That's what the life experience. So let's encourage the right life experience. Why does math have to be this strange, arcane, artificial, non-connected experience to the life experience? It's absurd.
Exactly. Resiliency.
Well,
we can promote resiliency.
Yeah. And perseverance, and the joy of perseverance.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Okay, let's talk about the fourth and final one, and that has to do with relationships and the idea of relationships within the classroom and outside of the classroom. So within the book, I talk about how it's so important to build professional relationships with the students and with all stakeholders, with teachers, with administrators, with parents. You want to get everybody involved in that process, building those relationships. And one of the worst pieces of advice that I
Easier said
received.
than done.
Yeah, yes and no. Yes and no. But I think let's talk about students first of all. One of the worst pieces of advice I ever received my first year teaching was don't smile until Christmas. And I did that. I was very stern in this, and the students didn't enjoy being in the class because I felt like I had to be the dictator. You don't want to become their friend, but you want to have a professional relationship where they like and respect you, and you can develop a relationship where you get to know them as individuals, so that if there's a situation where they are not doing their homework or they're misbehaving or they're struggling, you can build upon that relationship that's already been formed, as opposed to already starting off with a negative relationship, and then now you have to have that difficult conversation, and they're coming into that conversation not feeling good about you because of the way you've treated them, if you will.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I walked into my classrooms. We are shared learners. I mean, I really did treat my kids like adults. They were just as much an equal partner in the conversations we're going to have for the day as I was. And of course, I do recognize these are kids. They're young teenagers. They're going to make goofy life mistakes. They're learning. But if the base of that is from an adult conversation of respect, then you have the conversation. Okay, we learn that not doing homework and not actually realizing that learning that you can get away with just doing 3 problems on a Tantan assignment and pretending that you actually understood it, it doesn't pay down the road. That is, I want that kid to learn that for him or herself. That, actually you didn't really sort of figure out, assess your own learning. Learn that with me, where it's safe to learn that, where it means nothing in grade 9 or grade 11 or something. Now, I have to say that carefully because there's the relationship with the college admissions experience, which middle school teachers probably don't experience as much as high school teachers, that grades actually do matter for, what comes down on 12th grade. Um, but I'm very happy to let those things, those learning moments of being a kid, evolve and happen, not affect grades at the end of the year. Because to me, it's just I want to treat those kids as adults. When they do their goofy teenage things, as they will, that's fine. I did that too. I was a goofy teenager. Come on, let's learn it with me where it's safe and it doesn't matter, and learn what those consequences actually are. If I'm an adult telling you if you don't do your homework you won't learn down the road, means nothing. It's too abstract. Okay, don't do your homework and see what it's like. Then you know what it's like. You don't want to do it again. That's fine, and I'm comfortable with that with kids.
And I think this idea of a safe learning environment is very important as well. And that's part of the way of building relationships with students, is that they know it's a safe place. And I don't teach K to 12 school anymore. I only teach, at the higher ed level. But in the courses I teach, I talk about how I'm not concerned about, if you have the right answer or the incorrect answer. It's about the process. And if you make mistakes, mistakes are part of learning. We all make mistakes. How do we acknowledge the mistakes? Do we acknowledge them as a negative thing that brings us down, or we acknowledge by making a mistake it makes me a better learner and I might better understand the problem? So you have to make sure that when you make mistakes, it's part of learning, and the teacher's the one that sets that mood in the classroom right at the beginning of the year.
So then, okay, here's an interesting idea which everyone's balked at, and I've said it, but I don't understand why we give numerical marks for maths papers. What if someone did a quiz, an assignment, and I gave B, it was a beautiful piece of writing. I enjoyed every moment. You've got some numerical errors throughout the page. Just fix those up and we'll get you up to an A level. What if I gave feedback like that on a math paper? Wouldn't that be just a totally different experience of a conversation with kids about mathematics?
Well, absolutely. And in fact, many school districts, as well as my school district, is piling in moving towards standards-based report card grading, both for the report card as well as for the actual assignment. So we're not giving A's, B's, C's, or a 92 or a 64. It's a proficiency level. Are you meeting the standard? Are you approaching the standard? Are you well below the standard, or are you exceeding the standard? So it's based upon that there, not giving it as a letter. It's saying, how much understanding are you showing?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I once had the joy and the hard work of working for a college that had no grades. And my job was to write a very detailed report on each student's thinking process at the end of the semester. It was like a 4-page report, which was fabulous. I really thought deeply about each student's thinking and development and growth, which is great. Also, Then there's the time issue. How could I possibly do that for these 30 kids in one college class and do it for 5 college classes? Well, I think it was 4 college classes at the time. Unbelievable time commitment. So I see that time was mentioned somewhere in the comments. Yes, these ideas are fabulous, but when you're dealing with 150 students under your wing, how can you give that personalized conversation, that personalized reporting in some way? Any advice?
I'm so sorry. I was only half listening to you because I was reading a question that I was going to share that Tamara asked about a question there. Could you just post your question again, James? I'm sorry.
Post my question. Oh.
Or what was what?
A time issue. My time. So okay, it's lovely to give personalized reports, but
Yes.
it's very hard on one's schedule. How do you write a decent, reflective, wonderful, meaningful report for 150 kids over a 2-week period?
Yes, absolutely. That's
Any
very
advice on
difficult.
that?
It's very difficult to do that. One of the things that I would suggest doing is maybe not doing the formalized written report, but instead doing conferences with students in class where you meet with the students one-on-one for even 2 or 3 minutes over 2 different class periods where the students are working in groups or they're doing an activity or doing something, and you just conference with them every 2 months or so at the end of every quarter, and you just talk about how they're doing and get them a chance to reflect with you and have that conversation with them. So that's how I would suggest doing it versus writing out reports that people may or may not read. Having that face-to-face conversation, I think, would be a better way to value time.
So then the next thorny issue, you also mentioned the relationship with parents. So have you ever run into the issue that parents are expecting to see a certain type of experience in the math classroom or a certain type of problem set, and when things look different, they respond with fear and panic?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, that
Here.
currently happens within my role as a K-12 math coordinator within a school district. I have a couple dynamic teachers who work their tails off in regards to planning, and one of them does a flipped classroom model. And so the work that the students are doing in class is basically the opposite of what they'd be doing at homework. She's a phenomenal teacher. She gets great results, but it's not what students and parents are used to. So many times they balk on it. This teacher's not doing anything. This teacher's not doing the work. My child doesn't learn in this way here. So you have to be able to work with the parents in the beginning of the year to educate them on the approach in which you are taking, provide them with literature, provide them with an open house opportunity so they can better understand the approach that you're doing if you're moving away from the traditional approach, because many parents will balk at that idea.
Yep. I just saw another question. What about technology in the classroom? What are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on that one in particular?
So technology, I believe, should be done to enhance the learning. What sometimes happens is that the lesson itself is based on technology. So when you do a lesson, you should have your objective or purpose for the lesson. And then you want to determine what can I do to help my students learn? Is it doing a group activity? Is it a teacher-led activity? Is it a student-led? Is there a technology that can be used to enhance it? Could it be something through Scholab? Could it be an app that they do? Or could it be something that it's a particular calculator you use? So in regards to technology, technology is something to support and enhance learning, but it should not be the focal point of the learning, nor should it be the creation of the lesson based upon using a particular technology.
Someone maybe I'm too much of a Luddite. So I don't use any technology in my classroom. I am really, in fact, I'm really kind of a surprisingly boring teacher. I really do stand up in front of the whiteboard or the chalkboard, and I'm basically up in front of the room all the time, like the sage on the stage. So which is kind of alarms and shocks people because they always talk about having conversations with the kids, and I really have no technology. I've eschewed all technology in my classroom, which is kind of alarming. But my point is, I think it's another one of these things about a relationship. You've got to be honest to your true human self. If technology works for you and you think with technology and you think it promotes ideas because you can explain that well to others through technology, absolutely go for it. If it's not natural to you, then I say don't force it. I don't say be leery of it and run away from it. Give it a try. But then if it's not your thing, don't try to force it. If it's forced, then it becomes unhuman and unjoyful, and kids see right through stuff that's forced.
You know, I absolutely agree with you, James. I might push back a little bit in that
Of
our
course.
students, our students all learn in different ways. And so we have to be able to acknowledge that and be able to give them that opportunity. And for many students, technology is embedded in their life, not just in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. So we as a older generation, if you will, we have to make sure we learn the technology, and even if it doesn't ring true to us and make sense, if it helps 30%, 20%, even 10% of our students learn, we should be able to provide that opportunity. Sometimes we're going to share with them concrete representations. Sometimes it's going to be tactile, sometimes symbolic with abstraction, and sometimes there might be a technology that could help our students learn, and we really want to acknowledge that and share that. So I think, you know, if for you it doesn't work, well, you're one of the best teachers I've ever met. No problem. But for other people, I feel maybe we want to consider using the technology as a way to enhance the learning, because many of our students really learn with technology.
That's a good point. Yes, because I'm worried about my Luddite ways. So obviously this is in my mind too. So yes, of course, in the end, it's for what's best for our kids, all of them, be it the 10%, the 20%, the 40%, they're all around the place with different styles and backgrounds. What's right by them. That is the ultimate goal, of course. Good point. Thank you.
Excellent.
Hello,
I see
guys.
Sam's on board.
Hi, Sam.
Hello. I'm back.
Hello.
All right. I really I wanted to wait as much as I could to kind of jump back in because that was so interesting. I just want to make sure that we address the questions that got through in the chat. I believe there was one from Tamara. Sorry if I pronounced it incorrectly. Matt, I think you've noticed it, right?
Yes, and we did not get a chance to address it, so why don't we look at that right now, and we can
Would you like me
find
to read it to you?
Tamara's question. Her question was, how do you flush ideas with the extensive push for standardized testing, which is a one-time test and does not always gel with mastery learning and teaching? And I can begin by talking about that because I am very much torn. Because one of the things that I want to promote is conceptual understanding. So I would rather take 8 topics or 10 topics and go deep into those topics so that the students truly understand it and can apply it. Whereas the number of standards within the Common Core is maybe 25 or 30. And so we have to try to cover everything so that the students can show proficiency on the standardized test. And so the way that I would address it is I still will try to cover everything that I'm required to, because that's my job, and people many levels above me tell me we have to cover all of those standards. But I will focus on something that's called the power standards. What are the 5 most important concepts that I need to make sure my kids know to finish 5th grade, 8th grade, 11th grade, whatever the case might be? And I will make sure that those concepts, I will take additional time to make sure they understand, because I know that they need it for their next course, or because it's just something that's very important for their problem solving and mathematical thinking. And if it takes away a little bit of time from those other topics, so be it. We have to be true to ourselves. So that's how I would address it. What about you, James?
Oh my golly gee, this is such a tough one. I don't actually know how to answer this because so much depends on the school district or the school environment that you are in. And if the culture is such that it's based on those standardized tests, then the natural human reaction to that is to take the best strategy to deal with a standardized test, namely teach to the test. And the best and most appropriate reaction for kids is to just memorize and do for the test. That's a very compelling natural human response if that's a very large felt dictate in your culture and environment. Now, I felt that to some degree in my teaching, and my way around that was to declutter the curriculum. How can I find ways to get through those standards? And get through is a terrible way of saying it. It means you have like there's not joy in that phrase, get through, but sometimes you have to just get through them, but in a way that has a storyline. So I would actually think long and hard about how to just find the storyline through this piece of mathematics, be it algebra, there's trigonometry, there's geometry, whatever, that actually touches the mathematical story, happens to touch all the mathematical standards. So the people that wrote those standards are mathematicians and math educators. They know it actually is a storyline. They get lost in what the document that's appeared in the end. Refine that storyline, and then actually, as a story, you get through it really quickly and find you have lots of time at the end. You know, the prime example is the Global Math Project topic, Exploding Dots. That's why we chose that for this year, the inaugural math project piece, because it is a storyline that actually just cuts through so many of those standards in one amazing fell swoop basically within an hour, you've gone from understanding what place value is at kindergarten level all the way to infinite series at pre-calculus level. Crazy, absolutely crazy, but that's because it's the power of actually finding the storyline through those standards. That's what I loved about being a high school teacher. That's why I left the tertiary world to come to the secondary world, because there's so much depth in that curriculum material, K through 12, that those storylines are fabulous, but you have to dig for them and work hard at them. And when you do, then actually you're kind of outside that system of the standardized test, because you'll do all that material with the storyline of being connected human relevant one. So there's a way to do it. Hard work, got to think hard, got to work hard. But I say it's worth it for one and all.
And let me
Amazing.
end with one more thing in regards to the idea of the relationships there, is that something like the Global Math Project is really about joyful learning, helping teachers, helping students, but also the relationships of everybody who's involved in this Global Math Project, all of the ambassadors, everybody involved with it. It's like I am learning from them, and I'm becoming friends with them, and I'm building relationships, and it's growing for me both as a person and as a professional. So the relationships that's come out because of the Global Math Project has been probably my favorite part of the whole thing after Exploding Dots, because that's just mind-blowing. But the relationships here that's formed, that also has been very important, and I'm thankful for that.
We're all in this together. We're one united front here. We all wish the same thing for our next generation of kids, and especially in mathematics. It's all about let it be a joyful, uplifting, meaningful, relevant experience for one and all. It's the same from country to country. I travel all around the world. We all have the same vision. Let's change this world's perception of mathematics, and we're in this together. We are a community. We're good friends. We're all united on this front.
That's amazing.
Excellent.
Cool.
Very nice way to end this webinar, actually. But just before we end it officially, I just wanted to make sure that people know how to reach you guys if they want to reach you, Twitter, social media, things like that. Would you want to share Twitter handles, or maybe quickly a project that they can look for? We know about your book, Matt, for sure.
Yes, so I'm on all the social media. The Twitter I just put in there, it's the Math with Matthew. I have the Facebook account, which is Math with Matthew. I have the website, www.mathwithmatthew.com, and I also have an Instagram Math with Matthew account. So wherever there's social media, the only thing I haven't figured out yet is the Snapchat. I have not got that figured out, but every other form of social media, I'm there.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I'm just adding. There we go.
James, perfect. People can register, by the way, for the Global Math Week right now. We'll keep on improving that.
Yes,
for
register.
sure in coming weeks, but for sure, it's open right now. gmw.globalmathproject.org, if I'm not mistaken.
.org. Yeah. Or even what I wrote takes you there as well. So
the URL that you wrote takes you there, so that's perfect too. That is amazing. Let me add Twitter handles for NetMath and BuzzMath for people that are curious. Those are the products that
and Sunil, add your stuff too.
Sunil shared is at Math Garden on Twitter. So that's amazing. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, James, Sunil. Thank you, Matthew. That was amazing to have you here. It was an amazing evening.
Yes, and one final thing before you log off, Samuel, you just mentioned about the NetMath and the BuzzMath. I will tell you that I talked a little bit earlier about the history of math, and I'm so impressed about how you have the history of math truly embedded into that NetMath and BuzzMath product. That's really one of the only products that does that. So very well done with you folks doing that.
And we're having a lot of fun with that. Honestly, we were having a great time. So that is amazing. Thank you, everyone. See you on the next webinar. We'll post all the information on the Global Math Project website and on social media and things like that. So
all right.
See you next time.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you, Sunil. Thank you, James. Good talking with everybody.